Welcome into a new dedicated podcast. Ben Spicer and Jonathan Mumphrey here, and we're mixing it up a little bit today. I know you're really excited for this one, Jonathan. Get the chance to talk with someone who works for your alma mater, SMU, and this is the first for us here on the podcast. We welcome on Assistant Director of Defensive Personnel, Jeremiah Waite. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for being here. We're excited to get to hear a little bit about your story and how you doing, man.
Well, first off, pony up. Secondly, wow, what a great honor to be the first personnel person on your guys' podcast. So I'm honored that, obviously Jonathan and yourself, Ben, thought of me to be the first one. So, hopefully I don't ruin it for the rest of the people you try to get on the show after me. But no, in all seriousness, obviously appreciate you guys wanting to take the time to, have me on. And, obviously I love what Jonathan, you do with your guys' program. I got to eat with Jonathan at a really good barbecue place called Hutchins, and got to learn a lot more about the program and what you guys do and the ins and connections and network opportunities that you guys have. And I know personally I'm excited to continue working with you both, just the outreach and the ins you guys have on the high school side especially, but in turn as well, right? A lot of those high school kids that end up going to college at some point, you never know once the portal comes and connections and stuff like that. So,
well, first of all, man, I'm gonna just jump in here. I can't hold it back. Congrats on a great season. I'm super excited. I'm gonna get it back to being, but the atmosphere up there, and we'll get a little bit deeper about SMU. It's a proud moment for me to be one of the classes back to kind of see the vision come to fruition. Super exciting, man. So it's definitely an honor for myself personally to have someone from my alma mater that's represented on to be able to come on a podcast where that school gave me so much foundational growth being, there at SMU. In my time, I was there in the 90s. So it's exciting to see it. I love coming to the games. So you guys are doing an amazing job, and we'll definitely get into that. Ben, I had to jump in and just give a SMU love, man. So I'll let you take it off, Ben.
Hey, well, that's a good start. I wasn't going to ask a question of value. I was just kind of curious because you told me, I believe you said that Jeremiah's from Wisconsin. Is that right, originally?
That's right, Wisconsin. So
I got to ask because I'm from Kentucky.
Okay.
So I'm curious, your opinion on Hutchins. Had you been there before? What's your review of it? Because every time I'm in Dallas, man, that's where I want to go. That's my spot.
I love it. Obviously, with SMU football, we go to Terry Black's a lot for the OVs and everything, and had gone to another couple barbecue places, but that was my favorite so far. So,
tell him what I told you.
You did. No, you did. So, and obviously my fiance got to tag along for that as well, and she got to meet his wife. So it was cool to go there together and do that.
Well, I know
can't come to Dallas without having Hutchins, man. So he drove an hour in traffic to get there. So it was a great time. We had a blast.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Oh my gosh, when we come in, where we go.
Yeah, it's always worth the wait. Before we get into it, and I know Mump will really want to kind of dive in on, how you got to where you're at and, the role that you're in. But I'm kind of curious if you could break down for us what exactly you have done over the last 3 years for SMU and kind of how your role has changed over that time. And, just the success that you guys have had, how great is that to see, in your journey over these last couple of years this season?
Well, how about this? To start, I'll give a little background on my story because that'll lead into how I got to SMU. And then I can kind of paint the picture of kind of how I've, progressed up the ladder a little bit in my 3 years here. So, all right, it's a long story, so I'll be as quick as I can with it.
You're fine. Take your time.
Oh, you're good, yeah.
All right, so from Wisconsin, right? Some people say they can hear the accent. Others say I can't hear it. I think my O's and A's might be my giveaway to most people. So I grew up in a town of 1,000 people. I grew up it's not the middle of nowhere, but, the biggest city near, my hometown called Colfax, Wisconsin is like Eau Claire, Wisconsin, Menominee, Wisconsin, which, they're around 15 to 60,000 people. Then the big major city is Minneapolis, St. Paul, and like the Twin Cities. So, whenever we'd fly out anywhere, that's where we'd go is to that airport. So, small school. I graduated with 56 kids in high school. So, honestly, what's been a blessing coming out here to Texas and, the DFW area specifically, I know talking with Jonathan about this, is the differences in high school football, for what I grew up in versus here. So I think a lot of people, right, they grow up whatever little bubble they're in for, the division, the conference, whatever. And you may think you're the best player and think you're this, unworldly player and should have all the love and looks and all that stuff. And it's been cool for me right by working in this profession. So when I look back at myself as a player, I'm like, darn, man, there ain't no way I was good enough to be a D1 player. But you're in your little bubble, small towns, you think you're the man. So that's been cool to, obviously be in it and see that. But, I grew up in and played at a school where you got to play both ways. And for me, it was cool. My high school, Colfax, haven't really been known as a football team. We've struggled a lot. Before I got into high school, we really, lack of a better term, we sucked. My first 2 seasons, I think we had 2 wins total. And then my junior and senior years, we actually were able to make playoffs for the first time in like 10, 15 years. So that was kind of cool to see football be successful there. And, I guess I was a good enough player where I was, given the opportunity to play football at a Division III school called Wisconsin Lacrosse. So for those of you that are familiar with the state of Wisconsin, if you're not, I'll put my hand up. All right, so Green Bay's over here, kind of by that peninsula looking thing. Milwaukee's over here, Madison's over here, Illinois is like down there. So I played at Lacrosse, and that was like over here on this side of the state, kind of on the Minnesota border. So they're actually a really good D3 program now, but when I got there, they actually weren't that good. So I got to be a part of kind of similar to what it's been like here at SMU in 3 years. My 5 years at Lacrosse, we went from being one of the worst teams to one of the best teams. So I was a running back when I first got to college. We had a coaching change. I got moved to corner. Sadly, I never actually got to play in a game in college. I tore my ACL twice, and I tore my ACL once in high school. So kind of a blessing in disguise for me, truthfully. Obviously the recovery and all that sucked. I never wish that upon anyone, let alone I did it 3 times. So, but what it did cause me to do, especially that third time, is it really forced me to figure out, what do I want to do, right? A lot of kids when they're in college, all they, care about and think about, especially if you're playing a sport, is, working out, lifting. For me, being at a D3 school, I had to have a job in the summer. So I worked 40, 50 hours a week, and then we'd go work out afterwards. So a little different than some kids at the D1 level. And then, hanging out with friends, taking care of business in school, and like that was that. So the injury allowed me to kind of really shape my focus into what I wanted to do. And, Jonathan, you had asked, kind of like what was my coming to moment, like how I knew I wanted to do this. So growing up, I loved the football. Like I wanted to be an NFL player. Obviously, I'm 5'8". I didn't run a 4.4 40, and I'm not as athletic as needed to be that sort of guy. But I was the kid growing up where like people, like ever since I was little, right? I would know all the players like on the Green Bay Packers. Like they were my favorite team. So I know all the players on the team, and we'd go to training camp and people would like be like, hey, who's that player? Who's that player in that card? Like I would have all that stuff down by heart. So I guess ever since I can remember, like that was my passion and love, and watching the draft and, doing evals on players and giving my opinions on guys, like a lot of guys and women do in this country. Right. And in college, with the injuries and whatnot, my former head coach, Mike Schmidt, he's now the head coach at Northern State. I'll never forget it. We had a meeting, right? And he was our defensive coordinator at the time, and he helped coach the secondary. And he had us all in a meeting, and he just asked all of us one day, like, what do you guys want to do with your life? Like, what's your dream? And, it got to me, and I kind of was like, yeah, like, I think I want to, be a scout. And he's like, excuse my language. But he was like that. Well, that's bullshit. Like, what's your dream? I was like, I want to be a GM someday. And then he said, well, what are you doing to get to that point? And I was like, shoot, I haven't really done anything, right? I haven't connected with anyone. I haven't made connections with anyone. So my 5th year in school, my redshirt senior year, for lack of a better term, that whole spring, summer through the fall, I actually was able to do an internship with a company called Instant Scouting, Canadian-based company that prioritizes CFL players to try to get into the league. And I had just tried to build my network and connection base off LinkedIn, and they gave me an opportunity to work for them, do some evals, and I kept working with them through the season at Wisconsin Lacrosse in 2019, and then in 2020, in January, I actually got to go out to Fort Worth. They flew me out there for the College Gridiron Showcase, the CGS. I'm sure you guys are both familiar with. That's grown a ton. Jose Jefferson and I'm drawing a blank on his name. He works at a school out in Pennsylvania. They've done a really good job of building that up, and I got to connect and network with some NFL scouts there. And then what was cool with that is to fulfill my undergrad requirement to gain my degree from Wisconsin Lacrosse. I apologize. This is my dog Lucy coming for some kisses. It looks like. Hey Lucy. I had to do an internship. So Teamwork Online. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that site.
Yeah.
Basically, any sport and whatever, like soccer, football, basketball, baseball, you name it. Any job that's out there. Primarily, it's like ticket sales, member experience, operations, that sort of stuff. Not necessarily scouting. They like post the jobs on there. So for people looking for internships, jobs in sports, whatever level, it was on there. So I just applied to every single NFL internship I could because I wanted to get an internship in the NFL. And through that, I actually got the opportunity to interview with the Jacksonville Jaguars for a ticket sales and member experience position. And I had no experience in ticket sales or member experience outside of being like the public address announcer for a CBA basketball team in lacrosse. And the ticket sales experience I had, it was like the little orange tickets you get from like a high school game, handing them out at the start of the game. So I kind of maybe fabricated a little bit my experiences in that, and they still offered me the opportunity to take that position. And when I got there for the job, there was a time when we had it was like a happy hour, and I asked like the people, I was like, so why did you guys hire me? Like I had no experience. And they said, honestly, what stood out about you is how easy it is for you to talk to people, and you had no experience, so we can mold you to be what we wanted to be without any preconceived habits or stuff that you did previously. And I was like, oh, I mean, that kind of makes sense. So kind of took a leap of faith. I moved out to Jacksonville from January to March of 2020. Of course, COVID happened. So all the, opportunities and networks and momentum I had built there kind of went by the wayside a little bit. I was able to connect and get close with the NFL scout there. His name's Brian Squiglia. Goes by Squigs. He's not actually in the NFL anymore. He works for a company that deals with the NFL still. It's kind of like an agency sort of deal. But he basically told me, look, no one's hiring. You can't get a job even at McDonald's at this point. Try to get a job and get like a GA position with a Power 5 or G5 program, because they have NFL scouts that come through there and build your network and connections and ends with them. So I don't have any people that I knew in the NFL or college really at this point. And the only connections I had were, the couple people I met at Jacksonville, the couple of scouts I met at the CGS, and a few connections I had built through LinkedIn, right? So I basically cold emailed every single P5, G5 program that had a sports management master's degree, because that's what I got my degree in from Wisconsin Lacrosse. And I heard back from 4 schools: Illinois, Florida, Clemson, West Virginia. All 3 or all 4 schools obviously got back to me, but West Virginia was the one who stood out the most. So Matt Jansen, who's now the director of scouting for Notre Dame, at the time he had just taken the job at West Virginia. He had prior experience in the NFL. And what stood out to me the most about that position is he was looking for someone to come in and help him create an NFL style department that had like an in-house scouting feel of like an NFL department, because he had come from the Texans and the Ravens. And I had never heard of something like that in college. So to me, I was like, holy shoot, this sounds awesome. I can't get a job in the NFL, but at least, I learned from a guy who worked in the NFL and, learn what it's like to be in-house for an NFL team, if that's what he's trying to incorporate at West Virginia. So at first he said he didn't have anything with him, reached back out to him in the spring. So I said, screw it. I'm still going to apply to school. I got accepted. I followed back up with him and said, hey, I'm accepted into school. I'm a part of the online program. I'd be willing to move out there to work with the team if something became available. He said, get back on a call with me. I got back on a call with him, had to do a couple things for him, like a eval and like an advanced scouting thing, just to see how I did with it. I did those two things for him. He got back to me and said, hey, if you want to move out here, would love to have you. I can't promise you you're going to get paid. I can't promise you you're even going to work in the office your first season. But if you want a chance to come work for West Virginia, I'd love to have you. So again, I kind of was like, well, I guess I'm going to go to Morgantown. So moved out to Morgantown, West Virginia. I was roomies with a guy who's actually one of my groomsmen in my wedding that's upcoming in June. And that was my only interaction I had with people for my first 7 months in Morgantown, West Virginia. So day to day there, I would wake up, I'd do the stuff for my boss, Matt Jansen, that was needed for West Virginia. I would go to Planet Fitness to get a lift in, to get some sort of sanity and away from my apartment. I'd come back and talk to my roomie, who actually got to go into the office at West Virginia, and go to bed and repeat. So I did that for 7 months. So I didn't actually get to meet my boss until March of 2021. So obviously a wild situation for a lot of people. I still got to go to the games and, do some stuff for the games, but I never actually really got to step foot into the office until March of 2021. Obviously, once I got into the office from 2021 of March through when I graduated in May of 22, obviously was able to build connections and networks with all the NFL scouts that came in, got to do a lot of the, advanced scouting, portal, search, data input, tagging stuff to, look for on film and, try to gain advantages and look for tendencies on opponents. So I did a lot of that stuff at West Virginia, right? So I graduated in May of 22, and I'll take this a step further because I think this is important for a lot of people to understand, is like, when I was at West Virginia, I'm doing all this. I didn't get paid once for my work I did with the football team. So like, I had to be a bouncer on the side. I had to do DoorDash. I had to do Uber Eats, and it's Morgantown, West Virginia. So DoorDash and Uber Eats is not like it is in Dallas, Texas. So really most of the money I made was through bouncing at Joe Mama's. And I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship through school because they felt bad for me that I was moved all the way to Morgantown and was doing an online program and didn't get paid to work in football. So anyways, graduated May of 22. I got the opportunity just through, networking with some, scouts that I met at the Senior Bowl and the NFL Combine, and through West Virginia, I got to interview with the Green Bay Packers. So what an incredible opportunity, right? Like my hometown team. Obviously, I grew up a Packers fan. I was the person whose room, in my room still back home, is yellow walls, Packers memorabilia everywhere. Like I was that kid. I love that team. I probably would have died for that team when I was younger. But Matt Malaspinas, who, allowed me the chance to interview for the Packers. And, for the Packers, I don't know if you guys know, but Brian Gutekunst is actually from and went to school at Wisconsin Lacrosse, and he's the GM for the Packers. And then, man, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Their second or third in charge also went to school at Wisconsin Lacrosse. So that was a unique experience because basically they brought us in there the day prior. Since I had just graduated from West Virginia, I just told them, hey, save money. Don't pay for my flight out there. I'm driving home anyways. I'll just drive 4 hours across the states and go to the hotel. So then basically I showed up at the day before, they came and picked us up at 6 in the morning. I got to the Lambeau Field at like 6:30. They showed us around briefly, and then they basically told us, hey, you got till 7 through 1 p.m. to write 5 evals. You got to watch at least 3 games. You base it off our grading scale, and then we'll come and get you and you'll present it. So obviously extremely nerve-wracking. And because I obviously drove out there, I was able to basically be the last one to go just because other guys had flights to catch. So basically, they told us, hey, we don't want you to bring notes in. We want you to do this all off memory and just go from the heart. So I walk in there, and I felt like I was Jesus. I was at this big round table. I had Brian Gutekunst sitting across from me at the far end. You had all the scouts surrounding you on the sides. And I was right up there in the front. So I had to present on the 5 guys. And, obviously I'll never forget that, just the opportunity to do, that for an NFL team, let alone the Packers, is, obviously amazing. And unfortunately wasn't able to get one of those spots, but I learned a lot from that and took a lot from that, and, wanted to apply, some of the stuff they told me I can improve upon to be better. And from that, I didn't really have much going for me, and I kind of had to figure it out, right? What am I going to do now? I need to get paid. I got to make money. I got to do something, right? And a mutual friend, Russ Landy, who used to work in the NFL and the CFL, he knew Alex Brown. Alex Brown used to be the GM here at SMU. Now he's the director of player personnel at Ole Miss. So Russ Landy basically told Alex Brown, hey, I got a guy very similar to you. You'll love him. Give him a shot. I promise you, you won't regret it. So basically, Alex told me the same thing Matt Jansen told me 2 years earlier at West Virginia. Hey, love your story. Love what you do. Bet you'd be a great fit. I can't promise you you'll get paid, but I'll do what I can to take care of you. And for whatever reason, I just had a feeling. I had a feeling for West Virginia. I had a feeling for SMU. Obviously had no idea they were going to be a P4 program. This is still when they were in the American Athletic Conference, a G5 team. And, they had just gotten Coach Lashley in January, a whole new staff. So there were a lot of unknowns at SMU. And I had no understanding of SMU at all. I'd never been to Texas outside of the CGS. I mean, I couldn't tell you even where Dallas was probably at that point. And I, talked it over with my parents, and they're like, I think this is the best opportunity for you. So I kind of said, screw it. I'm going to move out to Dallas. So I moved out and lived out of a 330 square foot studio apartment building for my first year out of here. At my time at West Virginia, I actually was able to meet my fiance through bouncing at Joe Mama's.
I'm gonna jump in here so we won't get too far down the road. I love everything. So let's kind of go back. I mean, man, you kind of blew through your long-lived your dream school. Team to go and visit the Packers. You made that sound like, oh, I just got a chance to do evals, but how was it like to walk into? I mean, I'm a Cowboy fan. I definitely did not paint my room blue and silver, but in my mind, it's blue and silver because I live and die by the Cowboys, even though we're not that great right now. But how did that feel being there? I mean, I know you said interview, but walking in the whole stadium, kind of give us a picture there and what that moment. That's a big moment in your life. That's a big
Yeah,
step.
I mean, obviously, what a surreal opportunity. Obviously,
Yeah.
for any NFL team to have the opportunity to interview with them, I mean, I couldn't be more grateful for that. But I mean, obviously, the Packers are known as, being one of the more well-respected organizations, and having, scouts that are known, across the landscape is doing a really good job. So, just the opportunity to, go there, see that, see the facility. Obviously they have a tremendous history, and just to, be able to say that I was a part of a group of 10 young men that, got the chance to interview that day and be a part of all that. I mean, I'll always remember that and cherish that I
So
had the opportunity to do that.
So along this journey of you making these decisions, before we get into the SMU, and Ben, if you have a question, jump in. Um, along this, what was it's got to be something that's making you stay dedicated. I know you got a dream, you got a vision, but is it something back home, or you didn't want to go back
Yeah.
to the thousand
Yeah. Yeah.
people you
Yeah.
found, 56 graduation, something that keeps you driving, sleeping on couches. I can only imagine. And
Yeah.
Ben
No
probably
doubt.
can relate to this on some things to get to your goals. And I think some of these young people don't understand the sacrifice and how dedicated you have to be. What was that thing? I mean, it's something there. I mean,
No, great
for
question. And
me,
I apologize if I was rambling too. I didn't
oh,
mean
you're
like
fine. You're fine. This is
trying to get
no,
everything
no.
out.
Perfect.
But honestly, truthfully, I was raised by two loving parents that I'm thankful are still in my life and alive. They're obviously older, so I take for granted every opportunity I have to be with them. But one thing that was instilled from into me, ever since I can remember is hard work, determination, be willing to do anything and everything, and just be a good person and let the rest take care of itself. And for me, kind of like my big saying is like control the controllable. So like my attitude, effort,
Right,
and showing up, and I kind of let the rest take care of itself. So the hard work and seeing my parents and all the stuff they did to allow myself and my twin sister to do the stuff we wanted to do with every single sport we played, the trips we took, and all the stuff that we did. And by no means is my family well off. I mean, we're probably below middle class. I never would have known it growing up, but I mean,
right,
my dad's the only one who worked. My mom was a stay-at-home mom just because of my sister and I. And we didn't have a lot of money, so just the values they instilled in me, and just if you got a dream, pursue it. Obviously growing up in a small town, I mean, I love some of my boys from back home, and, growing through what's cool about my high school is from pre-K, elementary, middle, high school, it's all connected. I was in the same building my whole life, right? And I got boys that I love. They're never going to leave Colfax, Wisconsin.
right.
And I knew for myself, I did not want to be that guy sitting in the bowling
Yeah,
alley, sitting in the bar, talking about the heyday of my high school. And like, that's the best time of my life. Like, I wanted more for my life. I wanted
yeah,
to, and I knew like working in sports, you got to understand. And anyone that's listening to this just got to understand you're going to have to move. Like, you're naive to think you're going to be stuck in one city your whole life. And if you are, tremendous, great for you. It's just not realistic. So I knew that I was going to have to probably move around and, be willing to do that. So, but yeah, to answer your question, I would say just the values instilled in me, being a good person, being genuine, never being too big for anything and everything. I've done anything and everything you could imagine. I mean,
right,
I worked, in college, I had to work. I worked at an airport. I had to work for my dad's company where I stood on an assembly line for 8 hours a day on a mat, and I changed the same part over and over and over. Like, I've done
right,
every job you could think of. So I have these experiences where whenever I'm having a bad day or I think it's hard, I just go back and I'm like, darn, well, at least I'm not standing on a, mat for 8 hours fixing the same part over and over and over again.
right,
Like, I wanted more in my life, and
right,
experience that stuff.
I
right.
did want to say I'm eager to hear kind of how the SMU journey has gone, and what that experience was like at first, how it sort of
Yeah.
compared. But I do want to circle back around, and we have similar stories. I grew up in a small town as well, a little bit bigger than yours, but still not a lot of opportunity. Overlooked in Kentucky, and you're absolutely right about having to move in this industry. I've moved 3-4 times now since
Yeah.
2020, so I definitely feel your pain. But I'm curious because something that stood out to me as you're explaining everywhere you've been and all the stops, you're always networking. You're always putting yourself
Yep.
out there, trying to make connections that'll benefit you down the road. And it sounds like that obviously kind of helped you out and get into SMU. So just how important have relationships been? And did you realize they were so important, early on as you were starting out, or was that something you kind of had to learn?
I mean, at first it was just I gotta make friends or connections with anyone in the industry, or else I don't know how I'm gonna ever get my foot in the door. But obviously, as I've continued to progress through it, at the end of the day, any profession out there, it's relationship driven. I don't care what anyone
Right.
says. And
Right.
I forget who told me this, and they're so spot on with it. I always grew up in it. I was always told it's it's who you know. And I think that's important. I do.
Right.
But I think what's more important is who knows you. All right. What do I
Correct.
mean by that? All right. I know Jonathan. Ben, I just met you, right? All right. If
Right.
Jonathan's asking for something, I'm going to probably be more inclined to do it for Jonathan because I know him versus you, Ben. It's not because you're not a good person, Ben. I just know Jonathan more. And is that right or wrong? I mean, I guess it depends who you ask. I think it is what it is. So to me, just being genuine, myself, outspoken, being a good person, I hope those traits and those qualities and just being who I am have hopefully allowed me to, build relationships, which I have and continue to build relationships. So people, one, they remember me. Two, they have a good experience when they're with me. But three, if there's ever something that they need from me, they can come to me. If there's ever something I need from them, I can go to them and like I can get it. And it's not something where it's like, oh shoot, like I don't even know where to start. I don't have someone that does that or is in that profession or industry. So I could not speak more highly on the more people the more you put yourself out there, the more, networking events and stuff you can put yourself out there with to meet people, to talk to people, to ask questions, to get cell numbers, do it. And it sucks. I mean, do you feel like that person where you're like, oh, I hate asking these questions. I hate putting myself out there. It's such a grind. It's so hard. Heck yeah, it is. I understand all of that. But until you get to a point where people start coming to you, you got to do that, or else you're never going to get to that point you want to be at, most likely.
Right. No, I totally agree with you, man. It's it's who you know, and then is who know you and do they like you. You got to impress. You got to connect with people. I think it's the law of connection, and so many people don't understand. And I hope these young people understand. Yeah, you on the football field one day, and people might be saying your name on the intercom, but they don't really know you in the real world.
Nope.
So you're gonna have to get out there and become that person that connects. I come from a small town, a little bit bigger than 1,000. I mean, I come from we was about a little under 15,000 in Kilgore. So, I'm the guy. I'm loud. I'm always gonna talk loud. I'm connecting to people. But you have to get out there and go get it. And that's a lot of us all kind of come from the same grit, and that's what makes it different. And I think that's what we find what ourselves to be dedicated in until how we get to this point. So I mean, you've grinded through a lot, man. And first of all, I want to applaud you on that because I can only imagine. I when I graduated from SMU, I didn't move out of Dallas unless I chose to. So, I moved to East Texas for about 3 years, but and I was a networker. That's what I did. So vitamins out the trunk of my car right out of college. So, it's those different things you have to do. It was very successful at it. Um, but now you're starting to, your network has opened the door to SMU. Kind of
Yes,
pick up
sir.
there, kind of tell us that journey, and then we'll talk a little bit more in depth about kind of
Sure.
what goes on there.
Sure. Yeah. So kind of, obviously before you wanted to backtrack a little bit. So met my fiance at West Virginia. So
Beautiful,
when I first
my
got
my friend.
out, wait, what's up, Jonathan?
I said she's beautiful, and that's my friend.
Darn right. Yeah. I'm fortunate. I'm
Yeah,
a
that's
lucky
my
guy.
girl. Yeah,
Well,
you
one, I'm
are.
just lucky that I found someone that puts up with my butt and allows me to pursue my dream and, understands kind of how this industry is because it's not for everyone. It's hard to have a significant other in this industry, especially with the long work hours and the unexpected times you got to do stuff and the travel and all that stuff. So I couldn't be more thankful that I found her. But so my first, what, really 3 months out here, I actually lived by myself. She didn't come out here with me until October of 22. So my first season at SMU was the 22 season. So I worked up on the fifth floor of the football stadium at SMU. I didn't really get to interact with a ton of the coaches, but I was actually lucky enough. I was able to actually travel with the team my first season, and I was
Mm,
able to kind of, I guess, be different because so when I first got here, I had to help film during fall camp. We had to do anything and everything, and of course, I just got here, so I wasn't going to say no to filming. And I helped film during our fall camp practices. And obviously, not that I call myself Connor Stallions by any means, but part of some of the experiences that I got at West Virginia, included being able to watch film, whether it was PFF or on the film that you had that everyone gets to see. And, I would try and, look for tendencies and, ways that teams are doing stuff to maybe try to give ourselves an advantage.
mm,
So basically during one of the fall camp practices, I just tried to figure out like what our defense was doing, if I could try to see the signals and just figure out if I could figure out what our defense was doing. And it was like a 15-minute period. So I actually ended up I wrote down what I thought our defense was doing, like as if another team was trying to figure it out. And I actually shared it with my, former boss, and he shared it with one of our staff members. And, one of the staff members was like, "Who's this kid? Like, how does he know all this? Is he spying on us? Like, there's no way someone should know this." So I basically, through that, they were like, "Hey, like, we'd love to have you, travel with the team." So I got to travel, and I had to basically be the person that wrote down stuff for our defensive coordinator during the game. So that was an adventure to start with. But I kind of figured it out as we went along. And then through that, all of that, I didn't get paid, so I worked for free again. I did a job. I started with Planet Fitness, so I would go into work from like 7, 8 in the morning till 5 or 6 at night at SMU. I'd sleep for a couple hours, then I'd go to Planet Fitness and I'd work from 10 at night till 6 in the morning. I'd sleep for a couple hours, then go to work. So I did that for about a month and a half. Then they fired me because I'd be watching film and sitting down, and you weren't supposed to do that. So they finally caught me on the camera. And so I got fired from that. But then fortunately, my parents were kind of like, "Yo, like, we'll help you get through this season. Like, if you can DoorDash and do stuff here and there, great. But, we'll help you get through the season. Then we got to figure out what to do, from there." And I actually finally got my breakthrough in March of 2022. So I got to the title of assistant director of college scouting. So a lot of my role when I wasn't getting paid was overseeing the transfer portal, evaluating players, helping our former boss with the boards, helping with cut ups, helping on the JUCO side. So basically, my first season at SMU last year was, really, and I said 22, I meant 23 spring, was basically just the transfer portal, identifying guys, evaluating guys, getting players to our staff, working with the defensive side of the ball, and, helping to, manage their meetings when they met. But I didn't have a tremendous understanding on the high school side as much. It was more the portal and JUCO, and obviously I'd help on visits and game day and all that stuff. So when Alex left for Ole Miss and our new GM J.R. Sandlin came in, my role changed to assistant director of defensive personnel, and that's actually encompassed more on the high school side with evals, knowing about the younger prospects. I've been actually able to connect and network with a lot of the high school coaches, and getting names and just building connections with them and getting close with them and being able to conversate with them. And then, obviously still help to, manage the portal and getting names and putting lists together and, visits and game day stuff, helping with that. So it's been a really cool opportunity and experience for me to, kind of learn kind of how it all goes together. And that's kind of where we're at now.
What was your reaction like? When they come to you and they say, hey, we're ready to offer you a salary after all the years that you had worked for free and all the odd jobs you had to take on and all the sleepless nights you probably had. Just what was that like to, finally get to enjoy that?
I cried, truthfully. It was it was overwhelming for sure. Um, fortunately, I was able to do a good enough job where Coach Lashley wanted to offer me an opportunity to have a role at SMU, and obviously extremely fortunate and thankful that he thought highly enough of me to want to offer me that. And obviously as well fortunate, Alex and D West, James Brown, and a lot of other people that were here at SMU, whether they still are or aren't, that talked me up, to put me in the light, basically, as like, hey, he's someone that's doing a really good job. We should consider trying to get him on salary to get him paid. So I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at without a lot of people going out of their way to, one, think highly enough of me to want me to work at SMU and be a part of the Mustang family. So obviously I'm extremely grateful for that. But surreal moment for sure.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, and I know a couple of those names you definitely announced there. So I know Red. We've been doing the former players barbecue for about 3 years, and we just bumped into each other when you reached out to us on Twitter.
Hmm.
Um, that's kind of how our relationship started. What is making SMU different? What are you guys doing different to in your recruiting department to really, I know the theme here is to keep athletes home as much as you can, but I know you guys are really digging into it. And it's a change of mentality in some of the players. So what are the kind of traits you guys are looking for over there?
Speed, size, length. You don't have those three, it's really hard to be a P4 player. Now,
Got it.
obviously, I don't think our, tactics have changed. It's just our ability to be in conversations with players that maybe once have considered us as highly before, have changed with a new facility, the ACC logo, being a Power Four school, and of course,
Mhm.
success we had last year heading into the ACC, and obviously the current success we're having. Plus, oh, by the way, a brand new football only facility on top of it all. I mean, we've been really blessed to have a lot of supports and stuff happening all at once with the momentum of being successful on the field that have, obviously really helped us on the recruiting standpoint. And, obviously being in DFW, right? There's so many players that are just in this area that go all over the country. So, you know, building relationships with these guys and, knowing their coaches and everything, because of course, every school does it, but, if kids decide they want to go home, I mean, we're kind of a unique situation where there's so many darn good players in this area that a lot of them want to come and play home. And well, we are Dallas's team. We're the only team in Dallas, right? So, I mean,
Right,
by default, we are fortunate in that regard as well.
right, right. So, we talk to a lot of kids, and where I'm looking at this whole, we talk a little football here and talk a little recruiting. Um, with the portal and like you said, a lot of kids that played at the top schools here in the DFW area are wanting to come back home. I know several of them that's came back home and making
Absolutely.
an impact there. They're back being a hometown hero, so I know that's a great thing. I tell kids all the time, SMU give you a greater benefit than just football. It's the network you have, and that's what we've been talking about. With the alumni and all the wealth that's in the city to give opportunities after the game. But we deal with with our DR7 side on our platform.
Yeah.
In our scouting platform, we deal with a lot of high school athletes around the country, and I'm trying to get them to understand. Most colleges only taking about 5 to maybe 10, 5 to 8, 5 to 10 high school athletes, and they have to be prepared. Worst case to get on the field within their sophomore year. Am I
Sure.
telling them that right, or because that kind of I'm trying to get parents to understand
Yeah.
the power of this development and where we got to really compress time with these athletes, and they got to be able to come in and perform pretty quickly. And most colleges are not looking at high school athletes that they don't think can play because they can go get a grown man out the portal.
Sure. Well, I think it's just dependent upon the school that you're at, truthfully, right? I
Hmm.
mean, every school is at a different standard level, or I guess what they look for, kind of the way that they do it, right? I mean, you could be at a school, right, who maybe you have a supportive, booster clubs and, people that support the program financially, right? So maybe you have more wiggle room to go out and get portal guys. So maybe you don't have to
Right,
develop as much because you can just say, hey, we're going to go get someone in the portal. Or
right,
maybe you don't have the support financially. You got to develop young men from the high school level. So your priority is more on the high school side. Or maybe you're like, yeah, we'd love to get portal guys. We want to continue to get high school guys, but we could try to maybe get portal level players that maybe are getting overlooked at the JUCO level because JUCOs maybe aren't necessarily at the same level as they once were because of, the emphasis on P4, G5 FCS players. So you build your
right.
roster through JUCO. So, I think it's just dependent upon what school is recruiting you and kind of where they're at in terms of, the kids that they bring in typically on the high school side. How many kids do they bring in typically on the portal side? I think for kids, even to take this a step further, do your research, right? Everything's pretty out there in terms of 24/7 rivals, on three, ESPN, right? Like there's so many resources out there. I mean, just example, like let's just use SMU. Go look at SMU. Go type in 24/7 SMU recruiting 2025 class or 2026 class. See who we've offered. See who we have committed. So like use your brain a little bit too in terms of, all right, I am a really good, I don't know, receiver, running back, whatever position, right? Well, if the school that you like and you want to like you already has like four commitments at that spot in your class, well, is that school probably going to recruit you or want you? Probably not, right? So, I mean, I'm not saying that, you have to like go gun ho on this, but I do think kids can be more proactive with kind of, looking ahead and like utilize stuff that's out there. Plus, it kind of makes you look smart. Like if you, reach out to people and you're like, hey, I know you guys already have offered so and so, or hey, I see you already have commits at these spots. I'd love to be considered. Like it shows you do research, it shows that you're proactive, and it shows that, hey, like you're an outlier, like you're different, like you're probably a smart kid, you're probably going to learn stuff quick. I mean, just scouting wise, you can take stuff from that to apply to the kid that you don't even think about probably when you're actively doing it.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, I'm seeing a lot of these kids, a lot of parents, you see a lot of highlight film kids. Um, how do you guys dig a little deeper past the highlight film? What are you looking for in a trait? I mean, we got athletes, we see some of
Yeah,
them, they can definitely ball in shorts and t-shirts. And, I mean, we tell them all the time the film got to match.
no doubt.
Yeah, we can definitely because we pride ourselves as a platform to be a grassroots platform to kind of bring some exposure to the unexposed athlete. Because we believe some of these writers they don't really know football like they should. They're
Sure.
not evaluating them like they should. We really pride ourselves in evaluating these athletes, and so our whole purpose behind our platform is and mission is to expose these athletes to guys like yourself.
Sure.
And I'm
Sure.
trying to tell them you really got to work on your development, but your film got to match. I mean, kind of how do you guys mix that stuff up as people begin, to introduce athletes to you guys? How do you determine what to look for?
Well, first off, they got to look the part on film, right? I mean,
Mm.
obviously, and another thing too for these kids to understand is I know they all send DMs, right? I mean, I got a gazillion DMs I got to answer back to, and I will. I take pride in that because I used to be that person trying to DM people, and I would, you know, it'd make my day when I heard back from people. But what they got to understand too is, you know, the people they're reaching out to, right? They got a job. Like if it's a position coach, they're coaching a position, they got film, they got a game plan, and then they got to try find time for film. So my recommendation for a lot of these kids, instead of reaching out to to the position coach, figure out who is it that's working for that position coach. Typically, a lot of position coaches have a GA or QC that works directly underneath them, right? If that GA or QC likes your film, they're going to probably pound the table pretty hard to get you in front of that position coach. So I would recommend to these kids, you want to get noticed faster, build a relationship with that GA or QC that works for that position coach. Because in a lot of cases, that's the one who's going to be recruiting you anyways more than anyone as well, right? So, but to get back to your question, film's got to look the part. And then, you know, honestly, the second part, you know, for a lot of these kids, I would say that what we do, talk to people like you, Jonathan. A lot of these kids you've known, right? Since they were in fifth, sixth, seventh grade, you know their parents, right? So, you know, I can reach out to a high school coach, I can reach out to a position coach, but I can gain a lot of info from, you know, handlers, 7-on-7 coaches, teacher, academic advisors, people that, you know, maybe necessarily aren't as invested directly with the kids. So, you know, not to say that coaches aren't being honest on kids, but at the same time, like they may give you different perspectives on the kids that you maybe otherwise wouldn't have got, just to try to put the whole picture together, kind of like an NFL scout, right? And that's all scouts are doing, right? Like all the scouts that go on the road, right? They communicate to liaisons, coaches, students, like whoever they can talk to, right? So it's really just trying to piece together who that player is, what makes them tick, and you know, obviously, do they have what it takes to be a successful college football player? And you know, as you know, Jonathan, it's more than just football, right? Can you
It is.
handle the schoolwork? Can you go to class? Can you handle pressure? Can you handle adversity? How do you take hard coaching? Are you someone that's going to go above and beyond? Are you going to slack off? Like, there's so many different things that you want to try to piece together. And two, you know, if there are issues or concerns, well, at least if you know about it on the front end, hopefully you can put a system in place that could help that young man to be effective and successful once they get to your school.
Yeah. So I'm trying to take over all the questions, but so how has the NIL money changed the game and how y'all look at athletes and what you're looking for? Because let's keep it 100. Let's keep it a bean. Is you know, it's just you're the NFL now. That's a
Sure,
NFL league. So you know, a lot of people hear from the outside, but how does it change how you look at an athlete, a high school athlete, treat that athlete when they come, and it's pay for performance, which is great. I wish I was in that era because I
yeah,
was
no
ready to
doubt,
play every minute. You know, I'm a dog, so I'm always ready to eat. And
no
some of
doubt,
these kids don't understand that when they get there. And we can kind of even, some of the schools that they spent a lot of money on the NIL, they're not performing because some of those kids have got fat and happy.
sure,
Um, how's that changing the game? I mean, you guys have to, you have to put your NFL scout hat on and look from a
sure.
lot of different angles where I would bet. So I don't want to answer the question what I
No,
think,
no,
but
it's all good. I mean, again, this kind of depends on the schools too, right? I mean,
right.
at the end of the day, some schools have more money than others. It just is what it
Mm-hmm.
is. That's why the push is so hard to be a P4 program, right? Because the television revenue contracts, more money that you get from being in those conferences, and obviously more of a national spotlight you get from being in those conferences. But I mean, I think obviously NIL has changed the game because, I mean, well, shoot, to put yourself in the conversation with some of these kids, they already have, you know, a starting point that they're at. So, I mean,
Right.
if you can even be in that conversation. No matter how good you think they are, it doesn't really matter, right?
Right.
And obviously, right now, and collegiate athletics, there's still, it's not like the NFL, right, where there's a salary cap, where there's a X amount where every school's at, and how you use that funds is how you use it, right? There is no real number like that yet, right? So, until that happens, again, it's just dependent upon where you're at, what they want to put towards it, what you're willing to, do. And, there's been teams that are successful with, buying a lot of players, and there's been teams
Yep.
that have been really successful just developing at the high school level and plugging and paying certain players to fit the needs that they need. And I don't know, I guess if that answers your question or not, it's just really dependent upon where you're at, truthfully.
Right. No, I think you definitely do ask my question. I just one of the things that we look at is we want the kids and the athletes to know is number one, recruiting is tighter from a high school perspective now. And so preparation, your work ethic, you got to really understand the competition level when you hit any level school, but definitely when you're looking at a P4 or P5,
Sure.
there's dudes out there. And if you're not working and not willing to come in and work and they're cutting you $100,000 check a year or whatever it is, you got to understand they might be tapping you on the shoulder and say, we might need that scholarship back. And I
Right.
don't think
Yeah.
that reality is set in. And our job is to educate. Our mission is to educate and expose these parents toward the new world. They just see the dollars. They don't understand that year to year really definitely means year to year now. And when you paying money for performance, in my opinion, I don't know the
Sure.
fact, and you don't have to answer that, but that's something I want to make sure that we have on tape that these kids got to
Yeah.
understand and these parents you can beat your chest and want $300,000-$400,000 a year, but are you going? You got to perform to that. It's just like taking anybody
Or
else's
no.
job. You know what I'm saying? When you
Or
when you
no.
got that salary, you knew when you got your salary, you knew you had to outperform that salary, or they had a next thing going on.
Yeah. No.
So
I
that's
mean,
that's kind of where we are at that in the recruiting world.
yeah. No. I mean, obviously, every year is, you're trying to prove yourself and perform at a high level, and put yourself in a position where the team, obviously wants you. And obviously, for some kids, right, whether they get NIL, they don't get NIL, you know, what their scholarship, some schools don't do full scholarships and they're doing partial scholarships. So, I mean, there's different incentives and, stuff out there where, obviously, certain things maybe, dictate, obviously, like you can't just get rid of a kid if they're on scholarship, but
Right.
obviously, a lot of kids want to play and they want to be productive and play in the NFL. And, sometimes playing time, sometimes situation at school, and, other things, kind of dictate whether they leave or stay or enter the portal or whatever that may be. So, yeah, I guess that kind of ties into your question, like being, it is a year to year thing for sure.
Yeah. And that's on both sides because they can make a choice and you can make a choice. I definitely get that. I just want these high school athletes that are working to get a scholarship offer to understand you have to do the day-to-day grassroots work, and then you have to make sure all the things are part of the network. Like we're part of these athletes network to help leverage our relationships like yourself and other
Yeah,
schools that we're dealing with to be able to at least get them on the radar because that's the number one thing you got to do.
absolutely.
Um, and how the system work. And most people don't know that. So we want them to know that hey, we're here to help you. If you can ball, we want to make sure we get you in front of the right people. That's why Ben and our platform team they do all the writing articles and
Sure.
promote and make the lists and things of that nature. So
Yeah.
Ben.
Sounds.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is sort of a generic question because I feel like there's a perception or to me a misconception, that with all these changes, the transfer portal, NIL, and all that, that college football is kind of dying. But to me, you kind of look at how the season has played out, the great stories that we have in college football. SMU going to a Power Four conference, having a great season. Indiana for the
Sure.
first time in decades. You know, the season that they're having. I think there's been more double, in fact, unranked teams upsetting top 10 teams than we saw all of last year. So it seems like there's more parity now than ever in college football, and I think a lot of people weren't expecting that. So I'm just kind of curious now that you've gotten to see several programs up close and personal with the
Sure.
personnel and
Sure.
the day-to-day and everything. Just kind of what's your take on the landscape of college football in the future, and is it something that's exciting, and should we continue to be excited, or are the naysayers kind of right?
Nah, naysayers are wrong, bro. I mean,
I agree.
shoot. You hit it right on the head. I mean, teams. I mean, look at BYU being
Yeah.
undefeated. Obviously, the season we're having has been incredible. Army, Navy being both ranked in the top 25 at one point for the first time since like the 50s, right? I mean, what an incredible opportunity. And it's cool with the new format as well, right? I mean, you're guaranteed a group of 5 program, right?
Right.
So if this would have happened last year, right? Liberty would have got in over us, but
Right.
you would have been guaranteed a college football playoff opportunity. And you're basically guaranteed that by you win your conference championship game, and you probably got to find a way to do well in non-conference, and you put yourself in that conversation. So I almost kind of want to flip it and be like, yo, like, be in the Mountain West, be in the, American Athletic Conference, the MAC. They always play at least 1 or 2 Power 4 non-conference teams. You find a way to split those or win both, and then you go undefeated in your conference and you're 11-1, 10-2. You might have better odds to make it than the Power 4 team that's in the SEC that every week you're playing against a powerhouse and you're beating each other up, right? So I think Group of 5 teams have an incredible opportunity to make it every year, and I think in this new day and age, obviously with the NIL and whatnot, I do think with the portal, it does allow teams, if used correctly, plus with JUCO, to transform your team if you're able to bring in the right guys that fit into the culture that you have. Because no matter how special these players are, obviously if stuff goes bad or isn't going to plan, are you going to have the roster in place that can, figure it out and, work through the fire, or are you going to fold, right? And that's kind of the risk that you take with the transfer portal a little bit, because they're all new people. They're all in a new spot. Do you really know them? I could talk to people about these young men, but until you physically get them there and you physically have them do stuff and you're around them and see their day to day, how do you honestly know how they truthfully are? It'd be like, obviously, Ben, with you, like with Jonathan. I'm sure Jonathan heard great things about you and obviously hired you, but he didn't know you. Now he does, but he's kind of taking a leap of faith by bringing you on too, right? No matter how many good things he heard about you. So I think that's the risk that everyone takes. So, doing as much as you can to kind of be in the forefront of that and just ask questions and put yourself in a position to protect yourself and be as successful as you can be. I mean, you can only do so much.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I've become a college football fan. I wasn't a big one other than my school. Now, with all I have 4 channels going on all the time on
YouTube
Saturdays when
TV.
I'm not at SMU game. Yes, sir.
I love
So,
it.
hey, they can send a sponsorship. We won't keep promoting their name, but
Shoot, yeah.
so
YouTube
excited.
TV is the bomb. You should definitely work
Yeah,
with these guys. Absolutely.
absolutely, absolutely. So super excited about it. Ben, you want to close us out?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. We really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy. Got a lot of responsibilities there with SMU, and more importantly, wish you the best of luck the rest of the year. And I know you guys are going for higher goals than you've already attained, and we're both rooting for you. You got, like I told
No, I
you
appreciate it.
guys before we started the show, you guys beat my alma mater, so I'm joining the bandwagon for you
I
guys
love
for the
it.
rest of the season.
Hey, the tickets are out there. If people got to sign something, sign it. Like, we'll take you. We'd love to have you. It's been really cool. And Jonathan, you've been to a couple games now, and I'm sure you've noticed how incredible our stadium atmosphere have been. Obviously our students have been a tremendous support and, filling that out. I mean, the last, 4 home games we've had, they've sold out the student section, and less than 30 minutes. It's been incredible. I mean, to see where this program's come from when I first got here to the stadium to now, I mean, every home game this year's been a sellout darn near. And this game against Boston College on Saturday is going to be a sellout too. So it's been really cool to see the support and the people and, coming out to, watch SMU and be fans of us. And, I think we still have work to do. I think we want to continue to prove to people that, we can be a blue blood. We are a blue blood, that we can win at a high level, that we can consistently compete and beat P4 programs. And, we're right in the middle of the best high school football in the country. We want these kids to play for SMU. We want them to show out for the hometown people. You get all these hometown kids to stay together that are the top players in not just this area, but the country. And you're all playing on the same team. You got your starters that are dudes, your backups that are dudes, your third string guys that are dudes, and you're all playing together and you're all having fun and you're winning games and you're doing stuff that hasn't happened here in 40 plus years. I mean, what a tremendous opportunity that these young men have. So, I mean, I want to continue to, obviously sell that and be a part of that. And, obviously with alumni like yourself, Jonathan, I know obviously you're, supporting that, helping us out with that. Obviously like with Cohen Brown, right, from Waxahachie, right? We offered him. I know obviously with, being a family member of his and everything, like how cool would that be for him to play at SMU? I know that fire you up, and he's one of the best players in this area and let alone the country, right? So it's cool to see alumni have connections with family members and how we're at a different level now than we once were. We're like, you want those kids to come to SMU.
Yeah. I'm actually pushing another little cousin to you guys, Montre Jackson.
Entree, yeah.
About a 6'1",
Absolutely.
6'2" corner, can
Yes,
run,
sir.
so I'm pushing him over that 2027 class. So.
Yeah. But we weren't always in this position, right? I mean,
Correct.
10, 15 years ago, I mean, yeah, you could go to SMU and get the degree, but you're probably not going to win very much. So
not much.
Yeah.
But no, I appreciate you guys having me on, seriously. And I apologize if I talk too much. And
no, you're fine.
Oh, you're good. We enjoyed hearing your journey and your story, and we're excited for what's to come next, and excited to help you out and to work alongside you. So, congratulations to you on this great season, and best of luck moving forward. Jeremiah Waite, thanks for joining us. For Jonathan Mumphrey, I'm Ben Spicer. Thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of the Dedicated Podcast. We'll see you next time.